What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. As always, in recent weeks, it is your dynamic duo coming back to you live with the show. Of course, our fearless leader Chris, being out on assignment. He's working hard, ladies and gentlemen. He's working hard in the field to make sure the show is as best as it can be. So while he is out handling business out there and behind the scenes, we will, of course, handle things on this front. It is your guys, Jurg, and of course, like I said last week, the last third of our trio, but the second half of the dynamic duo, my guy Dame. Dame, how we doing today on this? I think it's been a pretty beautiful Thursday for me, Dame. I don't know, how's it been for you?
Oh, absolutely. The weather is amazing outside for a December day. Me just walking out 5 in the morning with a hoodie was amazing. I hate wearing a jacket, so starting off the day like that was a great start to the day, and so far so good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I like to hear that. Pretty good weather for myself too, and especially because I think everyone that listens to us lives in the Northeast, but for our demographics, that live elsewhere, to be here in December, going on January in the Northeast, and to be having days where it's like we're gonna get highs in like the 50s here, Dame. That's a blessing. I think NYC. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dame. Like NYC is gonna get a day here soon where it's like the high is gonna be like almost 60, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I
Yeah.
seen that.
Oh, it's going to be beautiful. But of course, we're not here to talk weather because while somewhat might be in the name, we are, of course, a sports first and sports always podcast, ladies and gentlemen. And we are here to bring you the good topics of conversation today because we have some interesting uh, tidbits to talk about. So, week 17 of the NFL is here. And in previous seasons, this would actually be the grand finale of it all, the coup de grace. But instead, this is actually the penultimate week of football because, as we all know, there's a week 18 now. So, we have to wait until next week for the season to be finished, which also means we have to be delayed a week for Black Monday for those that are not really hardcore football fans, American football fans, I should say, or don't follow the NFL as often. Black Monday is essentially the day after the final week of the regular season, where coaches and I think usually GMs too, but predominantly coaches get fired from their positions due to it could be a myriad of reasons. And best believe Urban Meyer would have been on this list. But even though Black Monday will be delayed a week, me and Dame are not going to wait for that. We are going to go over some coaches that we think are going to be let go once the season concludes, which essentially means some job openings that could come up here. And I think for every year it's always interesting to see who's going to be up next, who's going to get next here. And I think we're going to talk about that. And then afterwards, we are going to go into NBA because, of course, ladies and gentlemen, as we are recording this podcast tagline right there, it is prior to the new year. And, the NBA, as we head into the new year, of course, we know the NBA as a whole wishes that COVID would just stop. And I think we all wish that, please, COVID, just go away. But what are specific teams looking for? We're going to go through a little New Year's resolution type of thing where we're just going to say, what's one thing that teams should strive to improve on or to get better at, to just in general get on their roster in the new year to make a real push for things here in 2022. But ladies and gentlemen, before we get to that, a little bit of sort of news here. This isn't anything massive. This isn't anything groundbreaking that most would probably treat it as. But I personally, and my disdain for this gentleman, it's why I'm starting the show with this. But earlier today, Ben Roethlisberger said in a press conference that the Monday Night Football game upcoming against the Cleveland Browns is likely his last game at Heinz Field, and he also said that there's no better way of having your last Monday Night Football game, or excuse me, having your last home game at Heinz Field than for it to be under the bright lights of primetime football of Monday Night Football. Dame, I was just ecstatic when I saw this. I was finished with all my editing at work. I was waiting for the show to be over, and I saw this headline, and my arms just spread apart, and like I wanted to do like jumping jacks and like just celebrate. I was ecstatic. I immediately stopped because I'm like, dang it, am I gonna have to cut something here really fast? But I didn't have to in the end for work. Um, but I saw that. Now, we made it clear on the show, our disdain for Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers runs pretty deep here. This is not a pro Pittsburgh Steelers or Ben Roethlisberger podcast. We made it clear, but we're going to, at least for a moment, veer away from our real emotions on it. Dame, simply put, if this is Ben Roethlisberger's final career home game, and essentially for alluding to the fact that this is truthfully, as it's kind of been wishy-washy the last couple of years, his final season in the NFL, his final year as a Pittsburgh Steeler. What do you make of it with this being his last home game and just we likely have officially, even though we probably felt this for a bit, we are finally seeing the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career here.
I mean, good riddance. It's about time because on it, like all due respect, like he's a Hall of Famer. He's had an incredible career. He's won a Super Bowl. He's gone to the Steelers to the playoffs multiple times and deep inside playoffs so many times. But this is just far too late. He should have done this like 3 years ago, to be honest, after he had that elbow surgery. Because since then he hasn't been the same, and even the year before that he really wasn't the same. So to me, there was really no point in coming back. He kind of just made himself look worse. Like, I get it. He was always known as this warrior that takes these hits and always plays injured and stuff like that. But when it affects your game to the level that has affected his game, where he's now a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL, to be honest, where he can't throw the ball more than 15 yards down the field, like, it's time to hang it up. He should have hung it up a couple years ago, like I said. But all respect to him. He's obviously a Hall of Famer, great career. Just he should have done this a couple years ago, and we would probably wouldn't have hated him as much.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, and because no one's really harped on us for our Ben Roethlisberger hate, but I will say this, like objectively, he was a great quarterback in his peak years, and I think like I personally I always value what people say about their competitors, like what guys said about people they face in their era, right? And I think Manning and Brady and Rodgers and guys like that, I think they would speak glowingly of Ben Roethlisberger, saying that he was a heck of a competitor, and if you faced him on the other side, he is just an absolute beast, right? Like he was a great quarterback. He would put up stats, and it wasn't empty stats. Like he was legitimately, especially in his early years, I felt like after that first Super Bowl, like from his first Super Bowl to then when he got to the second one and a little bit after that, like he was a premier quarterback in the league, right? He put up season after season of 4,000 plus passing yards, had funny enough, a 5,000 yard passing season late in his career in 2018, just a couple years back. But I think kind of like what you said, Dame. And the thing is, for me, why I can separate this from my usual Ben Roethlisberger disdain is that I've said this about all the quarterbacks who have gotten pretty old here the last couple seasons. Everybody, except for Brady, apparently, and I guess kind of Aaron Rodgers, they don't age well. And the system needs to be perfect if the team is going to have success. And I think the problem is that we overvalue quarterback at times. Like, I don't think you can overvalue a real franchise quarterback. I don't think you can overvalue a quarterback in their prime. What I do think we can overvalue is the guys who have been there, done that, and we still think they can do that. You know what I mean? Like, like Ben Roethlisberger, it was the same with Eli Manning with the Giants, right? A little bit of the same with Philip Rivers, Drew Brees at the end of his career, Peyton Manning in literally his final season when his body fell apart. Like we keep thinking like these guys can still do it, but I don't think that's accurate. I think the thing with Ben, and I think you said it perfectly, Dame. That 2018 season where everyone was like, "Oh, he just had a 5,000 yard season. He just threw for 34 touchdowns." Da da da. Like people forget he had a lot of help in that season, right? He had, when he was still a good receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster. He had Antonio Brown. In a couple of those seasons for himself, he had Le'Veon Bell. I forget if 2018 was that lockout season for Bell. Well, not lockout, but like holdout season for Bell. But even without Le'Veon, he looked good. But he still had a really good group of receivers, albeit also in a pass-heavy offense because he kind of had his mitts all over the offensive play calling at that point, right? And I think in 2019, when he suffered the injury, I do think that should have been it. But the problem is that he was never going to give that up because in his mind, that's just how it should be. Um, and I think with superstars, it's always said that the ego the ego can stop them from seeing the reality of things. And the reality was that Big Ben just wasn't the same player anymore. Um, and I'm not gonna say it's hurt Pittsburgh because they clearly don't know how to put together any part of uh, next generation of quarterbacks because in part because of Big Ben, but also like they just haven't drafted good options. But I think we all know it's time, and he tried to hold it off, and I don't think it helped at all. I just don't. Yeah, they haven't been below 500 or whatever, but that doesn't mean anything. Wins are not a quarterback stat, and I think this season more than anything has kind of shown us like Big Ben, like yeah, it's okay, like on paper 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's not terrible, but it's not winning football anymore. Like that's pretty conservative, all things considered for stats. So Big Ben, well, personally, I do have disdain for you. Like you said, Dame, cannot deny it. Hall of Famer, multiple time Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowler, was in the MVP conversation a couple times in his prime. You know, from a purely career perspective, hats off to Big Ben. Truthfully, hats off to Big Ben. But from an off the field perspective, go away, you scumbag. I never want to see you ever again on TV. Moving on. Had to get my jab in there real quick. But moving on from that, we move on from the likely retirement of Ben Roethlisberger to the temporary retirement and halt of certain coaches' head coaching careers. Because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, like we talked about at the top of the show, Black Monday is being pushed back a week, just like the end of the season, but that's not going to stop us here. Myself and Dame, we're going to pick about 2 teams each year that we expect to make a coaching change here in the off season. That it'll be someone new heading the ship for these clubs in 2022. And if we want to, we could go into potential head coaching candidates, but that's only if we want to. We just have to focus on what coaches are going to get released here. So Dame, I want to throw it to you first. Who is your first coach that you are signaling here that once the final games are played next week, it's like, all right, I expect this guy to be done within the next 24 to 48 hours after that.
I know they came out with a report saying that him and the quarterback are going to stay, but I'm going to go with Joe Judge. Reason being is because, yes, obviously the reports now are saying, oh, he's going to say quarterback's going to say and all that, but that's with the current GM there and the current front officer and stuff like that. But at the end of the season, I think the general manager is going to be gone. And when a new general manager comes in, the coach is gone, the quarterback's gone. That's usually how the process goes when you bring in a new general manager and a new front office. You saw with the Jets, you saw with a lot of other teams, and that's what I think is going to happen with the Giants. They're gonna bring a new GM, whoever it may be, because God, that I forgot the Giants GM name. But whatever it is, he's definitely gone. Like he's ran his course with that team. So when the new GM comes in, he's obviously gonna want his own staff, his own quarterback, the same way Joe Douglas wanted Robert Saleh and Zach Wilson. He's going to bring a new coach, probably a young offensive mind, like the way the league is going. And with that young offensive mind, he's not going to want a Daniel Jones who has 1 or 2 years left on his rookie deal. Especially when the Giants have 2 top 10 picks where you can move up and get really any quarterback that you want. Is going to be the quarterback of the general manager's choice and the new head coach's choice. So I just see no way that this head coach and quarterback Daniel Jones, just to throw it in there, but mostly the head coach. I don't see him being there next year. The only way I see him being there next year if they keep the general manager, which I absolutely see no reason for them to do that. Especially when you have 2 top 10 picks, is the one year you're gonna have that. Like this is the ammo you can have to bring in one of the best candidates that's on the market. Like not many GMs would maybe want to go to the Giants with that roster that they do have, but this is the year that if you want to bring in a new general manager, you want to bring one of the top candidates. This is the year to do it because you have all that ammo and you have a new quarterback coming in. You can start fresh.
So I agree with you, Dame. I think that's an excellent choice. The GM that you are thinking of, and I don't blame you for not saying his name because I don't want to say his name either. Because to think that this guy has a job in today's football, David Gettleman. Now, yes, David Gettleman has built good teams in the past. Of course, he's built Carolina Panthers team that made it to the Super Bowl. But at the same time, like it's clear this Giants team is not good. Like they're just not. And to your point, yeah, really, Dan, what I like about your selection is that you went on all 3 levels. You went quarterback, head coach, GM. Get them all out of here. But see, here's the thing, Dan. I actually think that's the healthiest way to do it because usually, let's look at this. When you fire a head coach and keep the general manager, then that means the GM gets at least one more shot, right? And maybe that could be a good thing. Maybe a guy just got unlucky, and that can happen, right? Or maybe the guy is just an incompetent buffoon, as we will get to soon enough with my selection. If you fire the general manager, bring a new guy in, but keep the head coach, it's like this isn't the GM's guy, so this is going to be a problem. And kind of the same thing with the quarterback. If you fire either or the coach or the GM or both, but you keep the quarterback, it's like this is not their guy. So like, how much effort are they really going to put into making the guy better? And I know that kind of like sucks to say, but it's just a fact of things. Like, and I think with Daniel Jones especially, he's done nothing to really prove himself at this point in his career. So I just think at the end of the day, it's better, and especially for the Giants, I think that's a good selection there because I know Joe Judge's like the Giants this season, well, let's keep it real here. Like, even for low expectations, they've underperformed. Like, Dame, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all 3 of us, Chris included, in our 2021 NFL preseason stuff that we did, like our season predictions, I think we all had the Eagles finishing last in the division. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Either the Eagles or Giants, yeah, either one. But yeah, I think most of us had the Eagles.
Yeah, so the fact that the Eagles are way above them now, granted, I know you can make the same claim for Washington, but I feel like Washington, it's different mitigating circumstances, and Ron Rivera has the pedigree to where you will give him this year, right? You will allow him to have this kind of down year. Um, Now with the Giants, different story. Joe Judge has not earned that in any way, shape, or form, and I think like the hard nosed guy, he's trying to be a little bit too much like Belichick. Dude, you're not Belichick. You don't have the rings to get you that respect. And that just, I don't understand why his disciples just don't understand that dooms them all. I just don't get it. I really don't. But moving on from that, but yes, I think it's a great pick there, Dame. I'm with you. I think they should fire him, but I also could see a fact where it's like if Gettleman is retained, then I don't see Gettleman firing Judge. I think the two of them are joined at the hip with Daniel Jones, and I see the three of them. I'll put it like this: if one of them doesn't get fired, expect all three of them to be back for the Giants in 2022. And I think I just heard the screams of Giants fans everywhere when I heard that. I heard something outside the window just now. Some sort of echo. I saw a bird fly by, so maybe it was that. Moving on from that, Dame, I'm going to go. I'm not going to get a trifecta here like you, brother, but I'm going to at least hit two birds with one stone in this one. I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears. Need I say more? Matt Nagy is a terrible head coach, and Ryan Pace as the general manager is god awful as well. Ryan Pace has had the chance of several head coaching hires in his tenure in Chicago, and they haven't worked. And Matt Nagy, while it looked promising at first, and they've technically made the playoffs a couple times, I think win the division one time as well. Like that doesn't mean anything to what the product is now, where it's a rotation of quarterbacks. Just this season, right? I don't need to get into what happened beforehand. I'm just going to go with this season right here. You sign Andy Dalton to be the guy, technically speaking. Like he's going to be the quote unquote day one starter, as Bears Twitter so eloquently put. Then you trade up for Justin Fields, which I'm fine with, right? Justin Fields, quarterback in waiting. What was the purpose of signing Andy Dalton when you already have the veteran on the roster to be the stopgap and Nick Foles? And then with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles and Justin Fields, it's been a constant cavalcade of putting guys in and out of the lineup. And sometimes they just bench Justin Fields, and it's BS. It's not due to injury. It's due to them not always having faith in him. And I think once you put a rookie in there, you got to let the kid finish. Just let the kid finish out the game, finish out the week, finish out whatever, and then make that decision later. But you also need to have the internal discussions, I feel, to let him know, like, hey, we believe in you, but we're just not there yet. The system, we need to do better by you. Now, the Chicago Bears doing that is, did Matt Nagy go to Justin Fields after that first career game of his against the Cleveland Browns and say, I'm sorry, Justin, nothing went right. I'm sorry we let you down? Do you think he did that? No. Do you think Ryan Pace went to Justin Fields after that first game? Is like, Justin, I know this is a little bit of a quick situation. We're sorry about that. We want you to know you're still our guy. Put this game behind you. Do you think he did that? Probably not. I have zero faith in the competence of this organization in any way, shape, or form. Matt Nagy, he was with the Chiefs for a while, before, I think like 1 or 2 seasons before he came to Chicago, and everyone heralded him for kind of the same things they're heralding Bieniemy as, but Bieniemy's been there for a little bit longer, and I think you could probably argue has more success. Matt Nagy, like he had Mitch Trubisky, and I don't think Mitch Trubisky's that great of a quarterback, but he literally did nothing with him, who was supposed to be the not first overall, first round pick, third overall, or whatever he was, or
That
second
was his
overall.
pick. That was Matt Nagy's and Ryan Pace's first pick.
Yeah, that was their first pick together, and we should have known then. I mean, you and me knew Dame, I think, but everyone we should have known like that tenure it's not going to go well. So from terrible drafting, because even aside from Mitch Trubisky, like they've had a couple bad draft picks here and there. They've drafted some good players, but like this is my thing. If you're the offensive mind and the offense underperforms for however many seasons, what, why why are you still employed? How are you still employed? So, at the end of the day, just clean house of 2 or 3. Justin Fields, I think, compared to the Giants situation, Justin Fields, I think, is the kind of quarterback that you can sell a upcoming GM and then eventually the coach on, like, hey, he may have been here before, but let's be honest here. This kid had nothing last season. He didn't have a GM, he didn't have a coach. Let's be the guys that help him get his career on track. And I think that'd be a great thing for Justin Fields. And like, why not? Like, if you're gonna take a risk with a young quarterback who has shown in glimpses this season. He could be pretty good. And I think that'd be big. Also because the Bears don't have their first round pick this season because of the Giants trade. So you can't really go after a quarterback replacement this year. So I think a 2 year grace period working with Justin Fields for a new GM and a new head coach would be great there for Chicago. I hope nothing but the best because I actually personally like Justin Fields. I think there's some really talented players on the Chicago team, such as Eddie Goldman, such as Eddie Jackson. Allen Robinson is still there. Please, Allen Robinson. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to tell him to leave because he has Justin Fields now as his guy. So maybe you could actually stay there, Allen. But like for the most part, just it hasn't worked there in Chicago. Hit the reset. Do it for the team. Do it for the city, please. And yeah, so that is my first coach that I have getting the axe in let's see, Sunday coming up in like a week and a half, 2 weeks time. Dame, if you want to give your 2 cents about that selection, you can, and then after that, or if you don't want to at all, you can go into who is your next head coach that's going to be getting the axe here pretty soon. The pink
Yeah,
slip.
yeah. I mean, I think that Matt Nagy is like the far, 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 far favorite to be the first coach fired when the season ends. Like he is, we've been talking about him getting fired since last year and since week one this year. Like it's gonna happen. Like it's just meant to be. Um, my second coach that is gonna be a little bit surprised here, but not really. I don't really see this as a firing. I think you're gonna see it and it come out in the reports as a mutual separation. I have Pete Carroll, the Seattle Seahawks. Clearly the Seahawks have been underperforming the past 2 years. And you've already heard rumblings that Russell Wilson hasn't been happy there. He's not happy with the coaching. He's not happy with the offensive system. He's not happy that they're not letting him throw as much. Blah blah blah. And I think that all starts with Pete Carroll. That has a lot to do with Pete Carroll, obviously. And I do think that this offseason, Russell Wilson is going to come out and demand the trade. We heard rumors about it last year, and they kind of smoothed it over in the offseason. But I think after the year they had now, where they're already eliminated from playoff contention, I think this is going to be that Russell Wilson does leave. And when he does leave and they get all these draft picks, I don't think Pete Carroll's going to stick around. I think that him and the Seahawks are going to mutually agree to part ways because he's too old to be there for a rebuild. He's I think the oldest or second oldest coach behind Bill Belichick in the entire league. He's not going to stick around there for a rebuilding team that is going to contend in 5 years. Where who knows where he'll be in 5 years with health wise. So because I think the Seattle Seahawks are going for a full on rebuild this offseason and the way they've been underperforming the past 2 seasons, it falls on him. Russell Wilson is a superstar quarterback. Of course, some of the blame goes on him, but a lot of blame goes on Pete Carroll because you've seen Russell Wilson talk about and be rumored to not like the way that Pete Carroll runs the team and that offense. So I don't see this as like a firing, say like a Matt Nagy is gonna be. I do think they'll eventually just mutually part ways to make because of the respect that he has for the Seahawks and the Seahawks have for him. Because they have won a Super Bowl together. They have made 2 Super Bowls, won one, and they've had a bunch of success over his time there. But all good things must come to an end. And I think this is the season that Pete Carroll does leave the Seattle Seahawks.
So I think that's a great pick there, Dame. And what I like about that is kind of what you say because I think with a lot of the head coach firings, we get that headline that like mutually agreed to part ways. And I think of all the mutually agreed, quote unquote, I think this is the most realistic one for that. I think Pete Carroll has he's more than earned the respect from Seattle and from the entire NFL to where they're technically not going to fire him, but they're going to agree like it's time. And I think the Seahawks. I said it before the season. I thought that this was finally the year that it was all just going to blow up. And granted, I kind of figured it was going to happen with or without a Russell Wilson injury, but here we are. So there's that. I think at the end of the day that this is the right thing for Seattle. I love Pete Carroll. Don't get me wrong, and I think if the team could somehow make a quick turnaround here, I think he would stay. But to your point, he's not there for a rebuild. He's not there to wait. He's the perfect coach for either a true contender team or a team that's like a couple pieces away, right? Whether it be adding more guys or developing, which is what Seattle was. Think about it when he took over, right? So I think when you talk about perfect marriages, I think when we look back, I think we're going to say Pete Carroll in Seattle. The timing of it was just perfection when he got there. And at the end of the day, it all worked out so well. Like you said, constant, playoff favorites for what a good half decade plus stretch. 2 Super Bowl appearances. They won a championship that could never be taken away from them. His time there, being the head coach of that amazing defense, the Legion of Boom, helping Russell Wilson in whatever ways he has, being a leader. I think like I usually don't always. I don't think every single coach is as much of a leader as people try to say they are. But Pete Carroll's a leader, man. Like that dude is a leader. I would run through a brick wall, and he's just a genuine dude. Like the last couple years, like it's been whether it be funny stuff like he took off his shirt when DK Metcalf met with him, like that funny thing that happened. I forget I forget who it was, but like genuinely like calling like the new rookies that they draft and like having conversations with them, I think is really nice. He's one of the upstanding coaches, and I think he is one of those dudes where it's like the game will miss him when he leaves. Unlike these other guys who should probably never be head coaches. Again, Pete Carroll is one of those guys where it's like it sucks that he has to leave because he's such a genuine coach, right? But at the end of the day, kind of like we said, it's age. He is I think he might be the oldest coach in the league, actually. I think he is older than Belichick. If not, he is definitely top two, top three, because it's Belichick, Arians, and Carroll. Like, they're the three oldest in the league right now. And I think the three of them uh, have had great careers, great tenures, all champions, and Pete Carroll is going to be the first one here to go. And I think it's just all about timing at the end of the day. But moving on from that, slightly somber because it is the likely end to a Hall of Fame coaching career there. And for Pete Carroll, like we said, he deserves it. I'm going to move on to my second selection here. And we have a pick of the litter here, Dame. I think there's quite a few coaches here that could get fired still. But I'm going to stay in the NFC. So, unironically and unplanned, we have every single team here is from the NFC. I'm sorry, everybody. That's the way it goes. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings here. I've kind of felt this way about Mike Zimmer for a while now. I don't think, and funny enough, I actually, real quick, side note, I'm staying in the NFC North. And you wonder why Green Bay's run it for so long. Well, Aaron Rodgers, number one, and the inconsistencies of their other inferior opponents, number two. But I do have Mike Zimmer being fired here because, as presently constructed, they are 7-8. Their final two games of the season are against the Packers and against the Bears. I don't see them winning the Packers game. Straight up, I really don't. Spoiler alert for our predictions that will be posted on Instagram, but I don't think that they're that great. I don't think that that Mike Zimmer, like, he started out really great. Yes, they made the playoffs a couple times. Yes, they won the division once or twice under him. But again, it's just the offense for some reason just cannot get it done when it matters. And same with the defense. And the defense really, Dame, when you think about it, again, he's another one of these guys who's a specialty head coach coming in. The defense has kind of been here and there throughout his tenure, and especially these last couple years, they haven't been as strong of a defensive unit as you would think. They're only a plus 12 right now. They've allowed 372 points on the season. Now I know that may sound like not a lot, especially at this juncture in the season, but just consider this. Like, they want to be in the echelon of the great teams in the league, right? Well, think about this here. The Rams have only allowed 326. The Cardinals have only allowed 306. The Packers have allowed only 324, right? Here's the funny part. Teams that they should be better than, Dame, the Eagles and the Saints. The Saints have only allowed 305 points. The Eagles have only allowed 318. So what does that say about your defense, right? Yes, I think, well, Dalvin Cook has become amazing in his tenure, while Kirk Cousins has, I'll admit, looked pretty good at times. And of course, they have the skill position talent. They just can never put it together. And I just think it's time. I think, kind of similar to the Pete Carroll thing, I don't think they're going to say they fired him. I think they're just going to say they mutually agreed to part ways, but it's not going to be the same thing. Like, Pete Carroll gets the grandeur and the respect. I think Mike Zimmer, just, they need a new guy heading that locker room. I really do. And I think new guy, the thing is that I think with Minnesota, I think the pieces are there to where the next head coach that comes in is probably going to be not a stopgap. I don't want to say stopgap in disrespectful terms, but like he's there for a 2 to 3, maybe 4 year period of like, okay, this team could maybe still do it. There's still some pieces, but it's very limited. And maybe could that be why they keep Mike Zimmer after the season if they do? Perhaps, but I just think there needs to be a new coach in there. I think there needs to be a new guy, press some new buttons, get some things going there. I just think the organization needs a bit of a facelift from the head coaching department. That's at least how I feel. Dame, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think about Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, I their defense. He's always been known to be a defensive coach and all that, but the past few years they really haven't had that defense. But I think most of it has to do with they just don't have the playmakers on that defense. But the fact that they do have all these playmakers on offense, and Kirk Cousins isn't a elite quarterback, but with the kind of talent that they do have on the offensive end, he's good enough to get it done. I mean, Dalvin Cook's a top 3 running back in the league. Uh, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are arguably the best wide receiver duo in the entire league. So they do have enough to get it done, and they have been underperforming. So I could see this happening definitely, but I just think the defensive thing. I think a lot of it has to do with just not having the talent there.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. When it comes to that, that's just my mindset. Like I feel like my thing is just like I feel like in his early years, I think that that team had some of the great talent there. I think like they had Anthony Barr at one point. They had Harrison Smith. Yeah, like I just think that Zimmer had the talent at some point in his tenure, and he didn't win. And look, man, like sometimes at the end of the day, to me, that's enough to fire a coach. Like I don't fall in love with a coach like most people to where it's like, oh, I can't let him go. This has been the best however many years of the organization. Well, you still haven't won anything real. And for Minnesota, it was every single coach that Minnesota and Chicago have hired the last 15 years, let's be real, last 30 years, has been all about can we finally get over the Green Bay Packers? And yeah, maybe a here there, maybe a year here, a year there. They haven't done it consistently for 3 damn decades because Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And like at some point, you just have to think like, dang, what the heck? What the heck do we have to do to finally do this? And hey, maybe should they just wait? Maybe wait for the Packers to go and keep Zimmer along. Sure, but like again, just me personally, I think Mike Zimmer's time is up there personally. I kind of he this is not the same type of meltdown, but I equate it to Doug Peterson in Philly, where it's just time for a new coach there, man. And I think even funny enough with this year in the Eagles, like we can kind of tell, like we can say whatever we want about Nick Sirianni. He hasn't been terrible this season, considering the Eagles are in wild card contention here at the very end of the year. But that's just my mindset. So that goes over our at least our preview for the upcoming Black Monday in the NFL. That'll be here in about a week and a half or so times when these coaches end up getting fired. Are we going to go 4 for 4? Who knows? You know, this podcast has had some pretty good predictions and predictions on it, and you know, ourselves. You know, I like to think that all of us are pretty good predictors. Heck, the NFL playoffs last season showed that we were all pretty good. I think we all only got 2 games wrong, maybe 3 at most. So that's not too bad considering it's what 12, 13 total playoff games. So you know, we got some hitters on this team. But moving on from that, Dane, from all the football talk that has opened the show, we move on to the NBA talk because, of course, basketball is our specialty sport here on the podcast. Actually, we're pretty good at all sports, but basketball, especially, I think, is when we shine. And we're gonna be doing a little bit of a New Year's related shtick here to the NBA talk this time around. So, Dane, we're gonna go hot and fast and furious here with this one, no time. So, essentially, what we're doing here is that we're gonna list you 3 teams in the East and 3 teams in the West, guys, and we're just gonna say straight up like what's one resolution that this team should look at improving their team in some way, shape, or form in the new year to make some sort of run. Uh, Varying levels of successful teams here, but I think for the most part, with whatever we decide here, I think we'll be going. So, Dame, I will let you begin the proceedings here. We we really stay. Unironically, we kind of stayed a lot in one conference here in the NFL. We just did the NFC coaches for the most part, so we'll mix it up a bit here in terms of the teams we're going after. We're going to get teams from both conferences here. Dame, I will let you. I'll let you guide us the way here. Dame, do you want to go East or West, and then what's the first team you want to hit at here?
Let's go east to west. Yeah, and let's just go 76ers first.
Sounds good. So, what Dame, in your opinion, the Philadelphia 76ers, looking at the standings here, they're 18 and 16, sixth seed in the East to this point of the season, 5-5 in their last 10 games. Now, granted, they do have a 2-game winning streak here, but still not amazing for this team. But I think mitigating circumstances as well. But we'll get into that in a moment here. Dame, what is your resolution for the 76ers to get better and to get back in true contention in the East here in the new year?
Man, I think it's clear and obvious. They need to figure out this Ben Simmons situation. This has been looming over their heads since their playoff exit last year. But just to be a little more specific, I think their wish, and their resolution would be to get a guy like Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal on their team for in a trade for Ben Simmons. But obviously, it's not gonna happen. Like Bradley Beal, if one doesn't want to leave there, and two, the Wizards wouldn't trade Bradley Beal for Ben Simmons. And on the other side with Damian Lillard, like it's the same thing. Lillard doesn't want to leave, and the Trailblazers obviously aren't going to trade Damian Lillard to the 76ers. Although they are interested in Ben Simmons, but just not in Damian Lillard trade. So I think the 76ers resolution should be more realistic, and they should aim for a guy like Buddy Hield of the Sacramento Kings. Obviously, Sacramento Kings are a dumpster fire, and they've been trying to get rid of Buddy Hield for a while. They thought they had a trade with the Lakers in place, but obviously that fell through. So I think they're obviously looking for any kind of talent they could bring on that team. And you've heard rumors about some kind of Bradley Beal and Marvin Bagley offer for Ben Simmons. And I don't know how true that was, but if it was true, man, the 76ers should have took that because I doubt it's the same offer now. But any kind of deal that they can get with adding a guy like Buddy Hield to that 76ers roster, adding shooting, adding spacing to that team, I think it would be absolutely incredible because, to be honest, I don't really see who the 76ers could really add other than young players maybe from the Cavs that aren't ready to win now and help that team win now. While the 76ers are obviously a contending team now with Joel Embiid in his prime, they're not going to bring in a guy from the Cavs who's 22 years old who has no playoff experience whatsoever. Like you need a guy like Buddy Hield who's an established veteran in this league, who's a sharpshooter in the league, who's been counted on time and time again to make big shots for that team. Although they haven't really made the playoffs and this and that, but he's been in the league long enough where the big moments shouldn't be able to rattle him. And I just personally don't see anyone else the 76ers could get better than a guy like Buddy Hield. And I do think at the end of the day, the Kings could add something to Buddy Hield, whether it's the draft picks or Marvin Bagley, that the 76ers could just take a shot at. Or they could do a 3-team trade and trade Marvin Bagley somewhere else and get another piece there with Buddy Hield. So at the end of the day, obviously the 76ers are shooting for the stars of Ben Simmons, but I think realistically, a trade with Buddy Hield is probably their best situation now.
I agree. I think I have a similar resolution. Just get a new scorer. Just get more scoring and shooting in that organization here, man. And I think that I think the Buddy Hield deal is probably the best at this point. Funny enough, I think they actually still could pull off the Marvin Bagley and Buddy Hield deal because Marvin Bagley, like, what has he done this season? I asked that genuinely. What has he done this season to potentially trade his trade value? I don't think much. So you could probably still get that deal. Maybe how many first round picks you could get, that's a different story. But I think at the end of the day, as things move on, I think it just ultimately boils down to the fact that the 76ers need another score on that squad, and particularly a shooter. Tobias Harris is a good player. He could score. And yes, he's a good shooter, but he's not like a shooter. I think, Dame, your point is perfect. I think Buddy Hield would be excellent. I also think if they had no other choice, if they had to keep it in conference, I think Karis LeVert would be a phenomenal deal for this team. Obviously, you get a couple more pieces back instead of just LeVert. But I think Karis LeVert would not be too bad of a deal there. To get him back in a deal. Maybe TJ Warren could get healthy and if he could, show a little bit of what he could do. Maybe a Karis LeVert and TJ Warren for Ben Simmons, maybe a pick in there, like something along those lines, to to just add more scoring to this team, more shooting, high quality shooters. I think that's what Philly needs to go for here. Um, yeah, and I think aside from that, I also think a point guard would be really helpful to this team, like a true tried and true point guard. I think Steph Curry is there. Tyrese Maxey, I think, is a scorer, and yeah, he could get assists. But I think a real point guard, like a pass first floor general type player, would be really nice for this team. I remember in the offseason they were being linked to could they get Chris Paul, could they get Kyle Lowry? They didn't get either of those guys, so it's like, okay, what is this team going to do now? And I think point guard should be maybe secondary on the list. Maybe they could also get a point guard in that Ben Simmons deal as well. I think that would be pretty valuable for the Philadelphia 76ers to do. But I'm definitely on the same wavelength of just trade Ben Simmons. Like there's no reason to hold off on this anymore. Moving on. I'm going to go to the next team here really fast. The Boston Celtics here, Dame. The Boston Celtics presently find themselves in the Eastern Conference as the 10th seed, so the final team in the plan. They are 16-19, and they are coming off. They're presently 3-7 in their last 10 on a 3-game losing streak, and they are coming off just a brutal loss here to the Los Angeles Clippers. Dame, I don't know if you heard this. The Boston Celtics from 3 last night, Dame. Do you want to guess what they shot from 3 last night?
12%. Just a wild guess.
You're close.
Wow.
They shot 9.5% because, and this is the kicker here, Dave. They shot 4 of 42 from 3.
Jesus Christ,
dude! I saw that at work today. I was just like, are you kidding me? What? So, needless to say, what do the Boston Celtics need? It's kind of interesting here, Dame, because I think this team has a good chunk of, relatively speaking, what they need. I think they have the 2 stars. I think Tatum and Brown are a really good 1-2 punch, right? Al Horford's a decent big man to be there for the moment. and I'll give the kid credit. Robert Williams is great right now. I think he's really, really good. Now, I know some people are probably expecting me to go with a more defensive oriented big here, and that's normally what I would do when it comes to the Boston Celtics. But I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit here. Because while I look at this team and while they do have a good amount of stuff, there is one thing I do. Now, let me just say, let me be clear, they still need a big because Al Horford is old. Robert Williams, you could always use depth, and then there's Ennis Freedom. I really hate the fact that I have to say that as the last name, but Ennis Cantor, Ennis Freedom, whatever you want to call him, as the bench big man. Need I really say much more about the fact that he's there? Like, just it speaks for itself. I think this team needs a defensive wing. I think Jaylen Brown, while he's a pretty good defender, and I think Jason Tatum is a pretty solid defender. I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he's great. I think this team just needs another perimeter defender on them. Marcus Smart, for some reason, I don't know if it's just me, Dave. Like Marcus Smart doesn't feel like the same player he's been in the last couple of seasons, and I think in part of that is because his shooting this year it wasn't as good as last season. I think Marcus Smart. We will look back and think, dang, Marcus Smart really, really got a lot of help from when there were no fans in the stands because while his field goal percentage is pretty similar, he's now shooting 28.5% from three, and that is the lowest that he's had since his third season in the league. He shot 33% last season, 35% the year before, and 36% the year before that. So now he's only at 28.5%. That's not good. I think this team needs, if this guy could be a 3 and D player, I think it'd be great too. But I think just another amazing perimeter defender to join this club that could take the onus off of Brown and Tatum, that could really help them out and let those guys really focus in on scoring. I think that would be big. I still think a big man would be a nice addition for this team, but I think they need perimeter defense here, man. I really, really do. I think this team is desperate for it, and whatever you can do to alleviate the pressure on your stars, you have to do. And I think perimeter defender would be. I think it'd be a really nice selection for this team here if they could swing a trade, which I think they could do because they still got some assets here, Dame. Like it's not as valuable as previous years, but they still got some young pieces here that they could include. They can make more than one trade here if we're being real. Like they have a couple pieces.
Yeah, I mean that's a good selection. And like you said, their shooting is absolutely awful. And you also mentioned how Robert Williams has been really good. And usually we've talked about on this podcast how they just been never been going for after a center, and they've always been depleted at center and this and that. But so you obviously think that maybe Miles Turner would be an option, but with the way that Robert Williams is playing, I wouldn't really go for Miles Turner, but I would go for someone on that Pacers team, and that would be Malcolm Brogdon. Um, Malcolm Brogdon plays point guard as well. You just put him next to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. He's a really good defender as well, and he's an elite 3-point shooter, which obviously would help them, like you said, with their problem shooting. So having the 1, 2, 3 of Malcolm Brogdon, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, man, and Robert Williams protecting the rim, that's not only a really good defensive lineup, but that's a one hell of an offensive lineup. You spread the floor for these guys. You be able to lock down. I don't know if they're gonna have to get rid of Marcus Smart. They might have to, but at the end of the day, you're getting a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, who's not that far off from Marcus Smart as a defender, and he's a way, way, way better offensive player, and he's younger as well. So if I was the Boston Celtics, I think that would be my New Year's resolution is to go try to get Malcolm Brogdon, especially since that Pacers team is trying to rebuild. And you already saw stuff of them trading guys away. So I think Malcolm Brogdon would be a great fit for the Celtics.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My only thing is because me and Chris actually had this conversation a while back. I don't know if Brogdon is eligible to be traded. That's the only thing I don't know because he signed an extension this past summer. So I think that may disqualify him. I'm not 100% certain. But even with that, like I think you have the right idea in mind, Dave. I think I get what you're saying. Like a combo guard that could lean towards mainly playing the point
Mm-hmm.
would be a nice addition
You
for
need
this
a
team
guy that
because
could be
Dennis
able to run
Schroeder,
that offense and be able to distribute and calm things down, be like a floor general. Because Dennis Schroeder ain't it.
yeah, I was just gonna say Dennis Schroeder. I think is your perfect six-man scorer, but he can't be your point guard. Point guard. So I think from there, I definitely could see your point with adding a floor general. I think either a defensive player or a floor general for this team. I think either could be right. And again, they have a couple pieces here that they could ship off and make that trade happen. So Romeo Langford, Peyton Pritchard, Aaron Nesmith. There's some pieces here that they could part ways with, especially because Robert Williams has become so good. Maybe you don't need a starting caliber league man, but I would still hope for at least a backup. But maybe that's just why they're keeping Al Horford around. Moving on from the Celtics, our last team here in the East that we are going to go over. You know them, you love them. the New
I wouldn't say I
York.
love them right now. But
The New York Knicks. Dame, I'm going to go first here really fast, and I will let you close this out with the Knicks in the East before we move on to the West. What do the Knicks need? That's a tough question because I think there's several things that this team needs here. And I think, I think no matter what either of us say, I think we could both technically be right. I'm still going to stick by what I said before. I think the Knicks need a true second, like, star, and not even second star at this point. I think the Knicks should have really pushed for some sort of like all-star player trade in the offseason because my mindset is the only way you really get better in this league is improving your talent you have. And I don't think the summer the Knicks had, I don't think they really got all that much better. I think they stayed stagnant, and had the rest of the East stayed stagnant too, I think that would have been a positive for them. But obviously, as we could see, the East hasn't stayed stagnant, and the league is catching up, and the league is figuring out like what these guys like to do. Julius Randle ain't an all-star anymore. Well, let's be real here, he's not. RJ Barrett's having a little bit of a tough year three. Emmanuel quickly has been. I'll kind of take back what I've said before. He's looking better. He's looking fine at times, but his shooting is still not what I like. I've always viewed quickly as a six man of the year candidate in the future of his career. I think he's the Knicks Lou Williams essentially. I think he could become a Lou Williams type player, because I think he's a scorer, but nothing else. I don't think he's a amazing playmaker. I don't think he could be a defender either. That's just my take when it comes to the Knicks. I think they should have made a trade for an all-star. I don't know if they can at this point, which is the sucky thing. But hey, new year, new me, right? And sometimes you're supposed to set some unrealistic standard for yourself that you're not going to follow through on. Like, every year saying I'm going to go to the gym now, but I'm still me. But aside from that, I think the Knicks should have pushed for an all-star this past offseason, and I think they should try to do it again. I don't know if they can, but at least that's what my resolution would be, because I think at this point, I think only an all-star caliber player could save this team as of now. Dame, pass the ball to you, brother. Finish out the Eastern Conference portion of this topic. What do the Knicks? I really wish Chris was here this week because I would love to hear this from him too. But you will take his place as well, Dame. You're doing this for both of you, so it's a lot of pressure here. Not to put it on you. What do the Knicks need to get better in the new year?
they need. This is. I don't even think there's a player or anything like that. I'm just gonna go straight up. They needed identity. Last year they were successful because their identity was defense, hard nosed defense, grind out games, this and that. This year, I don't know where that's gone. I don't know what their identity is on offense or on defense. On defense, they're nowhere near the defensive team they were last year. They got rid of Reggie Bullock, Fran Ntilikina, guys that could play defense. They brought in guys like Evan Fournier, who don't play defense, Kemba Walker, who doesn't play defense. Mitch Robinson's taking a step back on defense. Julius Randle never did play defense. And they're not playing these young guys. These young guys are getting COVID, this and that, but they just don't have really elite defenders on this team anymore. Guys that want to grit and grind on defense. So I do think they need to get back to that. That's definitely one thing, especially with the coach that Tom Thibodeau is. He obviously is an amazing defensive coach, and that's why he won Coach of the Year last year, because of the Knicks defense. But I really don't know what happened. I don't know what happened in the offseason. I don't know what happened going into the season. I don't know why they got away from that. But they need to get back to that, or they need to find a different identity, because their offense is struggling because of it too. Because when you're giving up all these points, you need to score more points than you did last year, where this isn't one of these offenses that could go light you up for 120 points a game. Like, they don't have that kind of talent, especially when Julius Randle is playing like a sixth grader out there that gets mad when someone else is not passing the ball or playing better than him. Like, he's playing a little girl, and this is the guy that a lot of people heralded as our new franchise player and our new savior. Like, this is why I wanted to wait a year to pay him. We still had him under team control for $20 million before he went to free agency. We could have waited to make sure this is not a 1 year fluke, which clearly it seems like it was. And his attitude is piss poor. It's disgusting. You watch him every single game with the way he handles himself. It's absolutely disgusting. I can't believe we paid him, but just going back to it, like I said, they need identity on the defensive end and the offensive end, because they can't just go ISO Randall this and then he goes 5 for 25 and he gets angry and then destroys the whole chemistry of the team. So I do think they need to find identity on both sides of the ball, and truthfully, the identity is what they were last year, and I think that's what they need to get back to.
So that's a heck of a pick. I definitely agree. I think the Knicks, they don't feel like the same team from last year. And I think you're right. I think identity is a big part of that. I think with a couple of the new guys they've brought in, I think a combination, Dame, of some of the new pieces they brought in and how good some of the guys were last season, I think some of these players are trying to do a little bit more than what they have to. And I think when that happens, like, guys need to get used to each other again. And I don't think the guys on this team are, they're not cohesive like they were last season. I don't think everyone's bought into your point, and I think I think it all stems, man. I look, I hate to really get on this guy because I know he's at least a pretty good coach, but I always say this: Tom Thibodeau teams struggle after year one, and I'm not wrong. Like, or maybe not year one, maybe their most successful season. What look at Tom Thibodeau teams? Whatever their most successful season is when he's there, they never get back to that level. So I don't want to say that last year was peak Knicks because God, that would just be really depressing if it is with Tom Thibodeau. But like, they need to get back to that. And I definitely see your point. I could see the situation where it's like they just need a team reset. Like, maybe not trade someone, maybe not like none of that, but like just find themselves. I think the team needs to find themselves and figure this out. I really do. But yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment of the Knicks. I think on both our parts. Um, and yeah, Chris somewhere in the beyond. I don't know if he will. I think it'd be funny if he actually added his own audio after we discussed this, and just give his take really fast here, and then move on from the pod. But if he doesn't, let's we ourselves move on to the next topic here. Next half, the Western Conference. We're going to pick three teams here in the Western Conference that we are going to go after. Of course, we're going from east to west. So Dame, kind of like I did with the East, I'll let you start things off here. We got three teams here in the West that we're going to give New Year's resolution to. Who do you want to pick first of these three teams, Dame? Pick whoever you want, and what should this team look as their New Year's resolution to get just better in the year 2022?
Let's start with the shitty team. Let's go with the Pelicans. Um, man, they're the dumpster fire of the NBA. Not even the Western Conference. It's just dumpster fire of the NBA. Zion still isn't back. This has obviously been a concern since draft day. Like, will he be able to stay healthy? And it's just been a nightmare. But David Griffin has he seemed like a genius when he got all these draft picks for Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday and stuff like that. But he hasn't done anything with it. These draft picks don't mean anything if you're not able to hit them and you're not able to develop the talent. You're not be able to bring in other talent from trades using these draft picks or bring in free agents that will help develop the talent that you have on your roster and help you become a winning team. And now I do understand that Zion is out, and that's a big part of their team as that's their franchise player that they were kind of leaning on to help them become a winning team. But when you see these other good teams in the NBA, when they're missing a star player, they're still a competent team. They're still an average team that plays hard every single night, and they'll win games here and there, bro. With the Pelicans, that's not the case. I mean, you still have talent on the team with Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, and stuff like that. Like, you have the talent there on the roster where you can compete in a lot of games, and yet they're still not getting it done. So I don't know what's going on there, but I'm gonna say they need a whole rebuild again. I know they kind of went through that with Anthony Davis, but I think they need to go through this again. I don't think they're gonna trade Zion Williamson because they obviously haven't seen enough from him, and I don't think they're gonna get true value of Zion Williamson's real talent because of all the injuries he's had. But I could see them maybe trading a Brandon Ingram, especially if Brandon Ingram is frustrated with the way this team has been playing and he wants to go to the winning team. He obviously did get paid, but obviously, if he wants to win, he's not going to want to be there. And if the Pelicans really want to put in better talent around this team, they could trade away Brandon Ingram. Maybe not for draft picks, but maybe they could trade him for 2 or 3 role players that maybe fit this team a lot better and or help Zion Williamson develop and are better towards winning ball games than the team that they have now.
Yeah, I agree there. Actually, I think a rebuild, while a lot of people may not expect it, I think it could be time. I agree with you. I never understood why David Griffin was the guy there. I just didn't. I don't think that David Griffin. I never thought he was that great of a GM. Like, I know some people try to give him some credit for what happened in Cleveland. I know a lot of people say that when you're under LeBron, credit gets taken away from you too much because they always joke that it's LeBron's team. No, Cleveland was LeBron's freaking team, man. Like, David Griffin, he got this opportunity, and he was gonna go the route of working like under general managers and being an assistant or a special executive, like for advice and whatever, before he was gonna get back to it. I just think it was way too soon that he got hired. Like, when he get hired, just a couple years after leaving the Cavaliers job, and he's wasted these picks. Like can we name definitively what first round pick of this team has been successful since that Anthony Davis trip? Trade waiting. Still waiting. That's because they've kind of wasted their picks here. Even Zion, who's supposed to be the franchise here, has been injured. Now I will say, my resolution for this team personally is actually to finally get Zion Williamson healthy. I know that sounds like moving heaven and earth considering what the early parts of his career has been, but I think if he can finally get healthy, we can maybe get some idea of what this team can kind of be. But if he can, if I see, if I see one more headline that says he suffers a setback here, Dame, then just like trade the entire team. I'm with you. Trade the entire team. Fire Griffin, whatever the hell, because this is just getting ridiculous at this point. It really, really is. And the patience for everyone has run up to here. Like, if Zion apparently isn't patient anymore with New Orleans, guess what? We're not patient with you, dude. We're really not. If he pulls a Blake Griffin and starts dunking and being healthy with a new team, like with Blake, it was kind of funny to joke about that he wanted to leave Detroit. With Zion, it's just like, bro, you're a rookie. You haven't earned the right to do that. You've earned nothing in this league to be able to have that. And I think that's going to be bad for rookies in the future, for young guys in the future that come in and are generational type talents if he does that. Because man, that's just not going to be good for the players in the future. So Zion, you better get your act together. I'm just saying that right now. Zion better get his act together. Moving on from good old buddy Zion and the Pelicans, let's move to a team that actually has a little bit of success here, Dame. Let's go to the Dallas Mavericks here in the Western Conference in the NBA. Now, Dallas, of course, in the play-in picture at this moment of time in the season, they are the eighth seed presently. They are 16-18. They are 4-6 in their last 10, just coming off a pretty close loss at the buzzer to the Sacramento Kings. Of course, no Luka in that game. Luka's missed a couple games here due to being in COVID protocol. Um, my the Dallas Mavericks here. I think when Luka gets back, I think this team is so talented here, Dame, and I think Kristaps Porzingis has had like low key a bit of a bounce back season for himself. When at least compared to previous years, he doesn't feel like he's just useless being there. I know technically his rebounds may be down, but I don't know, Dame. At least for me, it feels like something about Porzingis. It's like he's not terrible this season. Like evidently terrible as we have criticized him for in previous years and previous playoff runs for Dallas. But when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks, what do I think this team needs here? I think ultimately what the team needs here, I think they're slowly getting some playmaking in there with Jalen Brunson. He's averaging 5.5 assists per game, which I think is extremely valuable for this team when you consider Luka being the primary playmaker. I think him being there is great. Um, I think there's some pretty good defensive players on this team, but I think they need a little bit more defense. So I'm going to go with the fact that the Dallas Mavericks need another perimeter defender on this team. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is a pretty solid defensive player. I actually do really like him. Frank Ntilikina as a backup guard on this team is not bad. I think he's been relatively well for them, and I like him as that backup defensive guard. But I just think, man, another defensive player on this team, another strong perimeter defender on this Dallas Maverick team, man, and then fully healthy, I think they'd be great. Like, could you imagine, Dame, if they had like Mikal Bridges or Matisse Thybulle, or even a player of those two guys mold on this team? So that's why I think Dallas needs to go for. I think a nice defensive piece here would really complete the roster in Dallas. I really, really do think that it would complete the roster well here with the Mavericks because I just think Porzingis, if he could just be fine for them, if Hardaway Jr. could just be the scorer and Luka continues to be Luka, you had a defensive guy in that lineup, like that can really like a really good defensive player can make a difference here. And I think a top tier caliber, or at least a pretty good wing defender, for Dallas, that'd be big.
Yeah, I mean, I this is one I agree with you on. I do have them needing the same thing as I have a star wing, but defending star wing, same thing. Like they need that presence on the wing. I know Tim Hardaway and Dorian Smith are good for their roles, but if they really want to take the next step and be a real championship contender, they're gonna need to find a star to put on that wing, not only to defend but to score the basketball as well and take some pressure off Luca. Obviously, KP has been playing better this season, but he's still not that true number two option. I think you go to when Luca's either out of the game or just struggling in the game. I don't think KP is the kind of guy you could go to that could take over the game. He's just not reliable. So I think going for a star wing that can not only defend with the best of them, because obviously Luca isn't the best defender, but adding a guy on the wing that can also score the ball and take pressure off Luca when he's either in the game and just not having it going, or he's out of the game, whether he's not playing the game or he's on the bench. A guy that could go get you a bucket, go get you stops on both, and play on both sides of the ball. I don't know who is out there like that right now. One guy I could maybe think of, but I don't think they're going to trade him is Pascal Siakam from the Raptors. I think that'd be a great fit for them. I don't think he's going to be available, especially for the Mavericks. But just a guy like that, just to give an example, I think it would be a really great fit for the Mavericks and something that they desperately need.
I agree there. I think, yeah, we both have that point. I think, and whether it's a star or not, I think like it could be here nor there. I think a star would help, but I just think from an asset perspective, I think it's more realistic for them to get a kind of second tier player, but still a really good perimeter defender. I like that. I think we need to do some more fantasy trades on the show. I think we need a fantasy trade episode here, Dane, because Pascal Siakam to Dallas. That sounds
That's
that
one
sounds
hell of a
interesting.
fit.
That's an amazing fit, I think, if you ask me. So we'll store that episode idea for another time. So moving on from that, let's get to the last team here. Dame, I'll throw this to you. The Denver Nuggets are going to be the last team that we go over in this episode for our NBA New Year's resolutions here. When you look at the standings in the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks find them. The Denver Nuggets. I apologize if I said Dallas again. The Denver Nuggets are 17-16. They are currently fifth in the West. They are 6-4 in their last 10, and they've won their last two games. Um, Denver, I think it's more situational with them, Dame. I think injuries have been really unlucky. They're waiting for Jamal Murray to come back. Michael Porter Jr. out for the year with injury. I just think it's a whole stack of things as to why this team is the way they are. But they've shown some glimpses here recently, and they're still a team to be feared. Dame, throw it to you first. What do the Denver Nuggets need to do here in 2022, whether it be up even when they get Jamal Murray back, or at least to placate until Jamal Murray is back and like fully in the rhythm of things, to make sure that they're still a true Western Conference contender in the year 2022.
Well, I'm just keep this simple. It's no players, no change to their philosophy, whatever. I think it's just straight up being healthy. I think that's what the resolution, I guess, New Year's wish would be, is to get healthy because obviously Michael Porter's out for an indefinite period of time. Jamal Murray still has to come back from the ACL injury, and he's just been getting hit with COVID here and there as well. So I think the number one thing is to just be healthy because if they had Jamal Murray last year or the year before, who knows what they would have been, where they would have been, at how far they could have gone. Because this team does have what they need to really contend for a championship. They just never got over that step. And obviously this year, where with like LeBron led team, where you need that kind of defender to stop LeBron to get to that championship, isn't really there because the Lakers are struggling. The field is wide open. You don't need that small forward that can match up with LeBron in order to get to the championship. So I think the door is wide open for the Nuggets. They just need to get healthy. Like I said, Jamal Murray obviously is a star point guard, one of the best point guards in the league. He just needs to come back healthy and be the same point guard that he was. And obviously, Michael Porter Jr. has to come back healthy and keep taking steps forward in his development and try to reach his full potential because, man, that guy can really score the ball. He just needs to get healthy and stay consistent. So it's simple for me with the Nuggets. It's just being able to get healthy and being able to stay healthy all together at the same time and really bringing that team to its fullest potential.
I agree. I think ultimately Denver doesn't need to make too many changes. I will say just because they lost Michael Porter Jr., I wouldn't be mad if they put together a couple of their younger assets. And I'm talking about like RJ Hampton, I'm talking about Bull, and whoever else they have. If they wanted to try to make a trade for a pretty good player to bring back here, like maybe he's a six man or a solid star, but if they want to just make it a six man, that's fine. Like just I think this team just needs a little bit of something here that could help them, but nothing too drastic. You know what I mean? Like nothing to take away from when Jamal Murray comes back. I agree. I just think this team needs to get healthy. Michael Porter Jr. is going to be out for this season, but I think with Jamal Murray coming back here, I forget what the timetable is now, but I think around the All Star break or so he's going to be back, and I think he's going to need a couple games here, like 5 to 10 games, to really get back in a rhythm. But once he's back, I think once him and Jokic get going, I think like that's when they'll hit the strike. Like look at the Nuggets to be a team for post All Star break to have like a really good run of things. I really think so. I think fully healthy, this team is talented. And if they do add one more, just like minor piece, I think that would help. But if not, like just bank with what you have. I definitely understand it. I definitely think like Denver has earned that because like the last couple seasons they've been pretty good. I think not last year, but I think 2 years ago, Dame, like they had kind of a not rough start, but like they were so at the beginning, and then they hit their stride. And I think this could just be the same thing going on with them at the end of the day. But yeah, those are our resolutions here. Dame, Why are we not general managers yet? Because I feel like we have like some pretty good fixes here to these teams, you
I
know?
ask myself this every day.
Indeed, brother, indeed. But that just about wraps it up for this week's edition of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, as you guys always do whenever you listen. Feedback is always important to us. You all listening and giving us, attention and views is always important to us, and we always appreciate it. So make sure you like, comment, and follow on our Instagram, the Somewhat.sports IG page. And of course, make sure you like and comment on these videos. Please comment if you agree, if you disagree. Let us know. Let us know anything, whether it be your takes, and we can maybe bring them up on the show, or if it's something we're doing, if we're not talking enough baseball. I mean, technically there's a lockout right now, so we don't really have any control of that. But like, just anything in the world, we appreciate it. But most above all, we appreciate your listens. Keep those counts going. We're getting inching very slowly, but we're getting there. 100 followers on IG is our next milestone. That's something that we're striving for. That's something we're aiming for. So let's get to that very, very soon here. Once again, thank you all so much for joining us. And when you're listening to this might be the New Year. So if you are listening to this either on New Year's Eve or New Year, Happy New Year. Hope your 2022 is amazing from all of us here on the Somewhat Sports Podcast. And we'll see you guys next time.